Hey everyone, it's Brandon here again for another video. Today's video is going to be about bipolar disorder again. I have an important update to make, and it's about finding stability, some tips of what finally worked for me. I was diagnosed first in 2013. So now we're coming up on 13 years of me being diagnosed. And it's kind of crazy to think the time has gone so quickly. The early years were the most chaotic. When you first come to realize that you do have an accurate diagnosis of bipolar disorder, for me, my initial diagnosis was bipolar disorder type 1 with psychotic features, as well as generalized anxiety disorder. With both of those diagnoses, it was just interesting to see how much that changed my life. It explained some aspects of my life before I was diagnosed, but I wasn't diagnosed until my senior year of high school, when I had my first obvious and full-blown manic episode. Your first manic episode, for me, and I think for other people probably as well, but for me, it was insane. The difference that that made, it really changed the entire trajectory of my life. I didn't foresee anything like that happening. I didn't realize that I had any mental illness or mental instability at all until that day when it began. And that night, I guess, before. The night before, and then the morning where people started to realize that I was acting different. That was, it was wild. It was a roller coaster. I had lived a life where I was very repressed in my expression. I was very sort of shy in a way, but I really just wasn't confident to speak my mind. I wasn't confident to really express who I authentically was and the thoughts and feelings I was actually having, until, this process started unraveling the sort of socially anxious person that I was. And now, looking years later, after I've been quite stable ever since, I would say 2023 was really my last hospitalization for my illness, for my mental illness of bipolar disorder. And what changed it all? For one, I would say exercising regularly is a huge thing. I really recommend it for everyone, but if you're bipolar, it's like you don't have a choice. If you want to have at all your best life or any semblance of a good life as someone with an accurate and severe bipolar disorder diagnosis, you need to exercise. You need to exercise regularly for the sake of your mental health alone. Beyond any changes to your appearance, your physique, how you feel in other ways, all of that is secondary to the mental health effects, the difference it makes on your depression for you to exercise regularly. It truly is essentially an antidepressant all on its own, potentially more effective than even a very effective antidepressant, even if you find the right one that works for you. Anyway, beyond exercise, maybe even more important is you need to listen to the medical advice you get from, whether it be a psychiatrist, a therapist, psychologist, but primarily here we're talking about a psychiatrist or someone acting in the role of a psychiatrist. A lot of the time you might get a nurse practitioner or a sort of general practice doctor who will prescribe you medications for bipolar disorder. That's all good. In most cases, it is kind of ideal to have a full-on psychiatrist. And the thing is, you need to work with your medical team. I found that beyond just a psychiatrist, it's also calling in to the psychiatrist's office when you have changes in symptoms. That's incredibly important. That's maybe like the one recent change I made probably in the past year and a half that's really contributed to a lot more stability for myself, is at the beginning, the very small onset of a bit of mania or depression that's to an abnormal degree. I will call my psychiatrist's office and I will speak to the nurse. And then I will tell the nurse what's happening. I will say if I think a potential short-term or longer-term change in my medication might be necessary. She will relay that to my psychiatrist. My psychiatrist will consider what's said, and then it gets relayed back to me, or a sooner appointment might get scheduled in with my psychiatrist. From what I've seen, psychiatrists are in quite high demand. Their appointments are often booked out for quite some time, especially if they're a good, successful psychiatrist. It could be months. So having a nurse on the team who you can talk to about smaller changes, more regular changes in between your normal appointments seem to be really helpful for me. Also, part of following medical advice from your psychiatrist or your doctor or nurse practitioner, whoever it might be, a lot of the time they are going to recommend that you don't use recreational drugs. If you want to have, in a way, your most stable mental health possible, it's generally, in most circumstances, good to follow that advice to a T. In my life, I have used psychedelics. I use psychedelics, I think, in a lot of ways to potentially save my life. When it comes to bipolar disorder, the intense depression you have, as well as what happens to you when you are heavily medicated, with many of these side effects from these intense antipsychotic medications, mood stabilizers, anxiety medications, antidepressants. The list goes on. It's a huge challenge. Sometimes you might have intense sadness, you might have lethargy, you can hardly move, you have no motivation. Your mood might be so flat that I think I've heard the word avolition used to describe that. I'd have to double check on the definition, but essentially, there are many negative outcomes that can happen with your mood, with your emotions, with the speed and rate and effect of your thoughts. There's just so much that can go on when you have bipolar disorder. It's something you truly need a support system for. So beyond your medical support team, this is maybe the next key attribute of finding mental stability as someone with bipolar disorder. Exercise is great. having a great medical team and working closely with them and listening to what they say and letting them know of changes very quick and early on whenever something seems to go even a little bit awry. It's better to catch it before it gets worse. That's a huge thing that I learned from Tom Wooten. He's the creator of the bipolar in order system. Someone to definitely check out if you have bipolar disorder. The main thing I learned from him is if you become more aware of when you start to become manic or you start to become depressed, and you watch it and you kind of rate it. You say, I'm sort of at like 20% of my manic capacity that I've seen in my life so far. That might be a fine level to go to work, to maybe you're in college or you're in, you might have many other things going on. At 20% manic, you need to be able to live your normal life. But you also need to watch out if you become 30% manic, 40% manic. That can be like you acting so strange to people that a lot of differences are going to happen in your life if you go around at 40% manic for a while. If you go to 50, 60, 70% manic is going to, at these levels, like serious health complications could happen, accidents could happen. It's insane, but I was getting to the next sort of key thing to consider. You need to have a good support system. So you have your medical support, but then you also have family, you have friends, you even have co-workers as well as your place of employment. Ideally, in an ideal world, you would have a place of employment or some way to work and make a living for yourself where people are aware that you have bipolar disorder. They know what it is. They know how you are when you come into different episodes. They've seen some history of how it can be, and they know how to work with you, and that ultimately you are still just trying to do your job, do your duty, whatever it may be. It can help to have an understanding employer. Some people, unfortunately, will find themselves in situations where they are discriminated against, or there might be, in a sense, some type of retaliation against you as an employee because you are having symptoms of your disorder. That's a time to advocate for yourself, but ideally, you need to be in close communication and honest communication with the people around you, the closest people around you, your best friends, your family, your parents. Those are the people who are going to be able to tell you, hey, Brandon, you're acting a little bit different now. Hey, Brandon, you're starting to seem kind of manic. At the beginning, when people start telling you that, it can be really triggering. I would get annoyed or irritable when I would hear something like that, or I would deny it, or I would say, no, I'm not, or I'd say, yeah, but I'm fine. You gotta listen to your support system, the people closest to you who love you, who care about you, who want to see you succeed and do well in life. You have to lean on them, and you kind of have to use them as the eyes that you don't have. They have a perspective of you that you don't have access to. And that's a perspective that, for the most part, is going to be free from the sort of mental illness, extreme states of consciousness that you might come into. You need someone else's perspective on you to really know where you're at. Because sometimes You might feel a certain way, you might feel great, you might feel happy, you might feel really positive and like you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes even being excited can scare people. Even being confident can scare people. Even being very happy, even being ecstatic, blissful, whatever it is, can scare people. One of the darkest parts of bipolar disorder that I've learned is if you truly let go of all inhibitions and show your rawest, most authentic, but yet uncontrolled self to the world, you will be rejected. You will be rejected if you really show everything, all the twisted recesses of your mind, as if you can do so with no filter. The reality is we live as social creatures, social beings, and maybe one of the most traumatic things that can happen to you in bipolar disorder is to get sort of socially exiled. Unfortunately, this happens to people too often who have serious mental health disorders. So that's about 16 minutes of talking. I hope that that's helped give some perspective to someone out there, to you who's listening, who might have bipolar disorder or know someone who has it. If you think you don't know someone who has it, you're wrong. Bipolar disorder occurs in about 2% of the general population. And from what I've seen, that really extends to whatever country or culture you're in. About 2% of the general population is going to have some type of bipolar disorder. About half of that, 1% of the population is going, so 1 in 100 is going to have bipolar disorder type 1 and have very severe manic episodes. And at that point, the disorder can become something far different than what people think of when they hear the word bipolar disorder. So anyway, I will let you guys go with that. I hope that you gained something from this. If you did, do me a favor and support the video by just giving the video a like. Write a comment out if you enjoyed something in specific or if you just want to show support. And feel free to subscribe for more of my content. I'll see you next time.